Hi, this is Denise Mathew, and today I'm going to talk about the human design chart of James Charles. And I'm going to have a little bit of astrology too, that will talk about the events that unfolded on May 10th. And I'm doing this analysis not really only to show the human design body graph, but also to have a hypothetical glimpse of the possible motivations and reasons for the people acting the way they did. It's not a hit piece, and I don't want anybody to think it is. It's not to invoke drama. It's basically to just look at the charts. What I hope is to gain more of an understanding of our inherent human nature and really how the human design system can play a part in how we interact and live our lives. With that said, let's get into the charts and see what we can discover as we go along. Since I don't have James Charles' birth time, I will have to leave out a few parts of his chart, but don't worry because there's still lots of information that we can get from the parts that I can guarantee to be true. So for anyone who doesn't know James Charles, he's a 19-year-old, almost 20. He'll be 20, I guess, on the 23rd of May. He is a beauty influencer who on October 11th, 2016, at the age of 17, became the first male spokesmodel for the cosmetic brand CoverGirl. He's best known for his YouTube channel that focuses on makeup, and he launched that in December 2015, and at the height of his YouTube presence had over 16 million subscribers to his channel. On May 10th, 2019, Tati Westbrook, who was a friend of James Charles and from what I heard was almost like a mother figure to him, she uploaded a video to her YouTube channel about Charles where she listed a laundry list of negative things about him, including his character and his actions. And after this, James Charles' subscriber count dropped by over 3 million in a few days. And that was probably the highest amount of subscriber loss that had ever been known to YouTube history. Needless to say, it was a big deal in the media and it was covered all over the place, including, of course, a lot of the drama channels that follow the celebrities on YouTube. On the same day, James Charles uploaded his own video where he apologized to his fans and also Tati and her husband as well. And he received mostly negative feedback from it. And many celebrities that had been following on Twitter and places, I guess Instagram, started to unfollow him. Since then, there's been quite a few back and forth videos. Even Jeffree Star chimed in a little bit. And I'll talk a little bit about him later on. I'm sure it's not quite over yet, and there'll be more videos coming out with what did happen and didn't happen. But at the end of the day, if you want more information, it's easy to find. Just check out YouTube. So let's get into the charts and see what we can see. I want to look at a little bit of the astrology that might have led up to this whole seeming meltdown of his career, even though in my opinion it's definitely a hit to him, but I think in the long run his life trajectory he's going to be just fine. And the reason why I have this opinion has a lot to do with the astrological transits that were hitting his chart around the time when things got heated. Now, these are just my musings. There are all kinds of better astrologers out there who will give you more detailed perspectives, and as I said, since we don't have a birth time, we can't really get a full view of a chart, but I think we can at least get a gist of what was happening. And from what I can see, the transits to his Jupiter and Moon and also some Neptune influence may have been the triggers. So if we look at May 10th, 2019, the day that Tati Westbrook's video came out, we can see a few things. First, the moon is in Cancer and it squares his Jupiter for some part of the day. The moon is all about the mother figure, and Tati, in James's own words, was considered like a mother to him. The moon can be a trigger for much bigger transits to show their power as well. So this definitely could have been where things started to get a little dicey. When I talk about a square, it's not a positive connection, but because Jupiter is a planet that's considered lucky and can talk about success in life and honesty and morals and beliefs and also where we can go overboard, it's for the most part positive. So transits to it can be a little bit hard, but not crazy hard as they would be if they were a little bit more difficult planets. Now, when we combine the moon with Jupiter, there can be a little bit of self-righteousness in the truth or the truth of what you see. And that would be for James because it's basically for his chart. And since James' response video came out around this transit, there could have been a belief that nothing too bad was going down after the Tati video, in his opinion. And so possibly, and really when you look at the video, it didn't look like he made a lot of effort when he made the response video. Of course, there was extenuating circumstances. He was in Australia, he was jet lagged, and he'd just woken up. So there were a lot of things that were working against him, if you want to say. At the same time, we have Pluto squaring Jupiter as well. And as I just said, a square is not a nice aspect. And when Pluto squares Jupiter, it just really talks about being too big for your britches and the universe giving you a kick in the butt, which is what happened to James, I would say. And a third transit that was involved at the time was Neptune, which was opposing James' natal moon. And opposition, it means it's directly against it. And so when you talk about an opposition, it's really usually related to a person or something like that rather than an event. And even though the moon moves quite a bit on any given day and we don't have his birth time, I know that it's between 10 to 23 degrees Virgo, so I can be pretty sure that the Neptune transit was still in play. Neptune is really a murky planet, and when you have a transit to some of your personal planets, which the moon is a personal planet, it can give a person a skewed perception of the world, and there can really be almost like a Pollyanna concept of what's happening around them. And if there's anything to be said about Neptune, it's really that it causes a murkiness in thought and an idealization of people, and really an inability to see what's real, and also what's an illusion in both people and the world. And what that means is that all the confusion that James talked about with the people that he was connected with and not being able to read the situation clearly really sounds like a Neptune transit in play. This energy can also make an individual want to withdraw from society and the world, and it can also leave them with feelings of insecurity about themselves and also with insecurity about dealing with the problems in the world. And with the moon's involvement, it talks about having difficulties with females in your life, which we can definitely see happened. Because Neptune retrogrades, or what happens is it can go back and forth over a certain part in the chart, this inability to read people and situations in a realistic way may continue to affect James Charles into 2020 for sure. Another transit or connection that James Charles may have been feeling is Neptune connected with his natal Venus. This is a more positive connection, and so that's why when I was talking about how tough it would be in the long run for his career, he has a lot of connections that can be a little bit challenging, but certainly there's a lot of positive energy involved too that's sort of balancing it out. Now, this Venus connection would allow him to communicate with the world in a more effective way, and he did put out a second video, and I think that sort of got his point across a lot better than the first one did. So the combination, as I said, of positive and negative, and also having Jupiter involved and also Venus, which are both considered good planets, can really talk about the whole ordeal as something that he probably would have learned a lesson from in his life and how he lives his life in the spotlight. And if I was going to give James Charles advice about these transits in play, I would say just because something looks a certain way doesn't mean that it is. And usually after the Neptune finishes playing with people, and it does play with people, all of the truth that you couldn't see will be revealed. But because Neptune moves so slowly, it will take some time for the murkiness to clear. With that said about his astrology, let's look at his human design chart and see what it tells us. Unfortunately, as I said before, I don't have a birth time for him, but the incarnation cross for the day doesn't change, so the day of his birth doesn't change much, so I can pretty much be certain that his incarnation is a cross of the right angle cross of the sleeping phoenix, and that's made up of the top four gates, 20, 34, 55, and 59. And I will talk more about that in a few minutes. Since the profile changes 3 times on his birthday, I know he's either a 2-4, 2-5, or 3-5 profile. And again, I can't really put much weight on the profile, but if I were to guess, I'd say he's a 3-5 profile. And the reason I'd say he was a 3-5 profile is because, number one, he's had quite a few controversies in his short life, and that can come across with having the energy of the 5, where you're projected on. You're always in a projection field, and people think you are something, and you can get in the wrong projection field, and when you do, people will blame you for saying things and doing things that may not necessarily have been your intention. Another quality of 5 energy is getting noticed, and I think that he's a very striking individual when you look at his pictures and that kind of stuff. I don't think he's the type of person that can go into a room and nobody notices him. There are other parts of his chart that we'll talk about why he's seen easily, but certainly having a 5 in the profile will help with that respect. The 3-5 profile also runs for most of the day that he was born. And also, based on the information that is all over the internet about his personality and how he's gotten into trouble a few times, it sounds like he's got experimental energy, and experimental energy is what the 3 is noted for, or the third line is noted for. And I have whole videos on all the profile lines if you're interested in finding out more. But the bottom line is when you carry 3 energy, it's all about your life path being all about experiments, and they can go awry as well as they can go right. And so the only way you can learn what works and what doesn't work is by experimenting. The moon is really an important part of a human design chart, but I really can't talk about his moon because it goes through a couple of gates on his birthday. So I can't really talk about his moon with accuracy. And the other question is if he is emotionally defined or not, because his gate 6 shows up after 7 p.m. So if he was born after, then he would be emotionally defined and have what's called an emotional wave. but if he was born before that, he'd be open. My feeling is that he's open, but like I said, I can't confirm that. The rest of the centers stay the same throughout, so we can definitely look at them, and of course all the gates except the moon stay the same for the day, so those are guaranteed as well. So the first thing that caught my eye in James Charles' bodygraph is that his incarnation cross is the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which I just mentioned. And this is a cross I'm quite familiar with because I did a whole presentation on Ted Bundy and also Mother Teresa and how they both have the cross, but their life trajectories were very different. So if you are interested in checking that out and finding out more about the cross, I'll leave a link below. So in human design, the incarnation cross is said to make up 70% of your personality, and it's also considered your life purpose. And the theory with the right angle cross of the sleeping phoenix is that anyone who carries a cross won't be fully activated until 2027. But since this is 2019 and 2027 is quite a few years away, we're just going to talk about the cross and what it is right now. The incarnation cross is made up of the top 4 numbers in the chart, the conscious sun and earth, and the unconscious sun and earth. In human design, there's a conscious and unconscious part of the chart. In other words, we're conscious of the personality side and we're less conscious of the design part. And that usually changes after the age of 35 to 40 years old, where we become more conscious of the design part or the other side of the chart. And what usually happens, though, is other people see in us what we don't see in ourselves when we're younger. And the reason why I'm bringing up that point will be shown a little bit later. The theory is that in human design, everything pushes through the conscious sun, and that would be the top number on the right-hand side, and that would be the gate 20. We're going to ignore the 3 because, like I said, we don't know if his profile is 3-5 or not. When we talk about the gate 20, it's also called the gate of now and also called the gate of contemplation. And what that means is that you're supposed to slow down before you act on things, hence the word contemplation. And with all gates in human design, there's always going to be a high side and a low side. The high side of this energy is someone who's very charismatic. And when you carry this energy, you can have a voice or words that unify people together. This gate calls for whoever carries it to do the right thing, even if everyone else is doing the wrong thing. I guess it'd be like the whole Spider-Man thing where he says, with great power comes great responsibility. And I would say that the gate 20 is something that really does have a lot of responsibility in how you carry it, especially when it's combined with the gate 34 like it is with him, which is considered the channel of power and charisma. The gate 20 can also have the energy of recognizing people's talents and skills of others and really intuitively knowing the best of the best. This power and charisma is not forced, but instead it's recognized by the people that are in your group. And the trick with this energy is to use your charisma with integrity. Now, there is a shadow side, as I said before, and this is using your charisma to act outside of integrity and also to act in a superficial way. It can also lead to a detachment from people and also a drawing inside where nothing really interests you. The gate 34 is in the conscious earth, and that's what grounds him, and it's half of the channel of power and charisma, like I just said. And it's like an L shape on the outside and circled there on the chart so you can see where it is. When someone carries this channel, it can be somebody who works harder than others. And that's because they have the capacity to do more work than others because of this energy that they have with the 3420. Elon Musk, who, as far as the media says, is a complete workaholic, is somebody who also carries this energy. So there really is a capacity to get a lot of work done, but there's also a capacity to do things in excess. And this is somebody who can get so lost in the work that they really don't have anything else in their life other than their work. And on the shadow side, somebody with the gate 34 or the 3420 channel can use force to get the things done that they want to get done. And there can also be an extreme amount of self-absorption to the exclusion of anyone else. So this really is about being so involved with your own process that you really can't see anything outside of yourself. This is energy that says, how does this make me feel? And more about how they feel around people as opposed to how people feel around them. And like I said, because this energy is such a driving force in someone who carries it, there can really be an inability to connect with anybody else's feelings. This is all about strength or force. Strength is admired and force is feared. So far, we've talked about the conscious side of his personality, his sun and earth. And then there's the other side of the chart, which is the unconscious side, and that's considered the design side. The unconscious side comes from a calculation of where the planets were 88 days to 90 days before his birth. So we can say, based on his human design chart, that he was consciously or is consciously charismatic and powerful. So hypothetically, that's how he knows himself already. So if we look at his unconscious sun, that would be the 55. And like I said, this is an energy that other people can be more aware of about him than he is himself. So if we look at the 55, the gate 55, it's all about creative energy and longing to create. And this creativity is meant to invoke changes in the world, intentional or not. And surrender is a huge concept with this gate because most times people who carry this energy want things different than what they have. And when they don't get what they want, they can be a tendency to blame events or people for being the cause of something that they don't get. There can be a victim mentality here, that they're not getting the best in life. And usually the whole trick with this energy is to understand that they're a victim of their own belief patterns, and it can lead to a lot of healing if they have this issue. This can be somebody who does a lot of complaining, and this complaining can strengthen the illusion that life is so hard. And again, this blaming, which is externalizing their complaints and blaming everybody else for everything that's wrong in their lives. The trick with this energy is to take responsibility for your life and take responsibility for your actions. And if you do, the universe will reward you. Ultimately, it's all about surrendering to what is and accepting that life isn't always going to be perfect and you don't always get your own way, but understanding exactly where you are in your life and how your life looks will give you the gift of understanding. And in the end, you'll be happy because you're not blaming or looking outside of yourself for something that just isn't there. And lastly, we have the gate 59. Again, that's in his unconscious earth. So that's something that grounds him, but it's unconscious. So he doesn't understand this part of himself. But other people can definitely see it. Now, if I were to pick something in his chart that might be the issue that he's having with all his friends and sort of the whole public meltdown kind of thing, I'd say it really does relate to this unconscious part of his personality, the 59. Of course, there are other parts in his chart that will connect to it as well, but because the 59 energy is all about sexuality, being seductive, and intimacy in general, and because it's an unconscious part of his personality, other people probably see this part of him where he doesn't see it himself. On the high side, this is a deep intimacy with somebody else. Now, it doesn't always have to be of a sexual nature. It could just be an intimate relationship with anybody, a business partner, a friend, or any non-sexual relationship that you might have. The 59 in the low expression can come with an underlying fear of relationships. There can also be a need to keep a certain part of yourself hidden so nobody can actually see it. And when this energy isn't developed in the highest expression, it can be somebody pushing themselves onto other people physically and emotionally, and can also lead to rejection by the people that are being pushed on. And when somebody who carries this energy is rejected, there can be some anger with the person that rejected them. There can also be an addiction to unhealthy emotional relationships and also a need to dominate. The low frequency can be about never ever having a committed relationship, or alternately being very clingy in nature and not understanding that not everybody wants the attention you want to give them. So if we look at the incarnation cross as a whole, we can see a lot of what Tati spoke about. Because when you carry this cross, there can be an inner struggle with sexual power, seduction, and issues with relationships. And because this energy is unconscious, the fact that he's not aware of how he acts can certainly be an issue. And the way he could probably solve his relationship issues may be to slow down and wait for something to respond to. And that's the strategy of a manifesting generator, which he is. And when he has something to respond to, it should get easier for him to read the cues of how people want to interact with him. And if he does slow down and see what shows up, there's a good possibility that the low expression of using power and charisma to seduce people without much thought, if that in fact is the case, would be less of a problem for him. And this abundance of sexual energy and need to express it could be used in a secure relationship rather than with a lot of different people that he's interested in. And the other interesting thing about this cross is that a lot of people in Hollywood actually have it. One notable mention is Miley Cyrus, who has a very similar configuration to James Charles, and it's interesting how she also went through a very rebellious and sexually expressive period in her life when she had some relationship issues with her current husband, Liam Hemsworth, well before they were married. And what that says about the 59 energy, especially when it's in the top 4 numbers of any body graph, says that this energy can be strong and express itself in all kinds of different ways. So if we look at other parts of James Charles' body graph, unrelated to his incarnation cross, we can see that he has an open identity, also called a G center. Now, when someone has this center open, there's an inherent need to feel comfortable in your space, and wherever that is, and at home, in a restaurant, anywhere at all. Because when you feel uncomfortable, life doesn't go well for you. So if you go to a restaurant and you don't feel comfortable in the seat you're sitting in, you probably have bad food that night, or things won't go well. So ultimately, for somebody with an open identity, it's really, really important to be in a comfortable space or feel really comfortable where they are. And this need for comfort might explain a little bit of some of the stuff that he talked about in his video about why he actually decided to do the sugar bear emotional thing, and how he did it in sort of a very quick manner. Another thing about somebody who has an open G center or an open identity is the need to be liked, and also to somehow and sometimes overcompensate in some way so that people will like you. There can also be a fluidity in your self-identity, because any of the open centers or the white centers in human design body graph are all centers where the energy is not consistent, and so it changes based on the people you're around and the energy that you're in. So really, somebody who has an open identity or any open centers can be affected positively or negatively by the people they spend the time the most around. And this influence by the people that you're around will change as you get older and when you're more mature and more clear on who you are as an individual. So that's why it's important for James, as well as pretty much anybody who has an open identity, when they're at a young age, to really surround themselves with really good people, whatever your definition of good is. And to this point of this lack of clarity of who you really are as an individual, it was interesting that James Charles made a statement in April 2019 about his sexuality, and he said that he was not fully gay, and 5.5 on the Kinsey scale, saying that there have been girls in the past who I've thought were very, very beautiful. I mean, this kind of comment really does show the fluidity of an open identity. So when somebody has an open center, or in his case, an open identity, we usually look at the gates, also called hanging gates, that come off the center that's open. So if you notice in James Charles, he has the gate 7, 13, and also 25, and they're all hanging gates coming off his identity. So if we look at the gate 25, that's a gate of universal love and also innocence. And when you carry this energy, there's really a need to accept life as it is rather than how you want it to be. And this includes accepting the pain of life. And rather than swallowing the pain that unites all humans, it's the concept that only by accepting and owning it can we truly heal. People who carry this energy can sometimes feel like they're constricted in their own body, like their body is something that constricts them from actually going and doing what they want to do. And there can also be this need to escape life rather than dealing with their true feelings. And they might want to numb the pain with drugs, alcohol, sex, and any kind of excess. He also has a gate 13, which is all about everyone telling you their secrets. And since some secrets can be really heavy energy, it can be difficult because everyone wants to unload their stories on you, and it can also drain you. What this also means is that you might know a lot more information about people than other people do because, as I said, people will just tell you their secrets. People with the energy of the gate 13 can also sometimes get stuck in the past and also make it into something that it was better than it really was. Lastly, he has a gate 7, and this is the energy of a natural born leader, and as such, people will go to him for advice and instruction. And the trick with this energy is to be firm and fair as well, because this could be like a people-pleasing energy, just trying to make everybody happy, being a leader, but just trying to make everybody happy. And that really gets exhausting after a while because there's always going to be somebody who's not happy with what you do. And in a world of likes and dislikes, this would be a tough energy when you get too focused on people not liking you, especially when you have an open identity. The best way to express this energy is just to be open and honest, and that way you're the most effective leader. And understanding, again, like I said, you can't please everybody. You can only please a certain amount of people, and as long as you're happy in what you're doing and it's not harming anybody, then it's okay. So if we move further on down the chart, we can see that he has an open spleen, and he also has a few gates coming off the open spleen, and these gates are also called the fear gates. Having an open spleen means that somebody can sometimes not have a real good grasp of time. So in other words, they might be early for something, extremely early or extremely late. Also, people who have an open spleen can be sick all the time or not sick at all. So getting back to the gate 32, and we can see from his chart that it's on the conscious side of his chart, so that's something he's conscious of. The gate 32 is all about ambition. So what it says about James Charles is that he is ambitious. But because I said it's a fear gate, that means that sometimes when people carry this energy, they have this fear that all their big dreams and all their big ambitions won't actually work out like they want them to. And because it's found in the planet Mars in his chart, that means that it's somewhere where he is going to mature as he gets older. Because any gate that's in the Mars energy is something that gets better as they get older and they get more mature in it. So what that means is that because it's a fear gate and it's also in the Mars, it could be just really being so ambitious that you're willing to do anything you can to get ahead in life. The other gate that's coming off the spleen is the gate 44. This is on the unconscious side of his chart, and it's also in his Mars as well. So again, this is an energy that's going to mature as he gets older. The really interesting thing about this energy, the gate 44, is that a lot of beauty influencers have this gate in their design. To name 3, we have Tati Westbrook, James Charles, and also even Jeffree Star. When you carry this energy, there's an intuitive sense of knowing how to package and present products and ideas in a way that's attractive and inviting to people. And again, with him, it's unconscious, but he just intuitively knows it. People who carry this energy make things really look good to sell. And there can be also a fear that comes with this gate of the past repeating itself. Because like I said, anything that comes off the spleen is a fear gate. There can also be a stretching of the truth and making things and events appear much better than they really are. There's also a potential to tell lies with this gate, and maybe not necessarily lies. Maybe the better word would be dressing up something to make it look better than it really is, or also stretching the truth. Another place that's really good to look in a chart is the Saturn gates, or where we learn our deepest and toughest lessons. And the reason why we want to learn these lessons is so that we can get the rewards from the planet Jupiter. So the gates he has in the Saturn placement are the gate 3 and also the gate 24. The gate 24 is all about sunshine and beauty and putting a positive spin on everything, even if things aren't so positive. It can be lying to yourself and others about everything being wonderful when it's not exactly the case. Honesty and accepting that some parts of your life aren't really pretty is exactly the way you're supposed to deal with this energy. Because in the low expression, this can be somebody who actually puts a positive spin on abusive relationships, trying to see the good in it, even though there isn't any good. The gate 3 is all about right timing to bring new ideas and concepts to people. This is mutative energy or new thinking energy, and it needs to be proven to be adopted. In other words, anything that's different and innovative usually has to be proven to be valid and valuable before it's adopted by everyone around. And what that means is if the timing isn't correct, his ideas for new and innovative products and ways of doing things may be shot down. And as I said in the beginning, it's all about timing. Now, if we look at the Jupiter rewards for him, they're the gate 25, which we've already talked about, and also the gate 42. The gate 42 is all about project management and also seeing project to its end. It's a type of energy that's difficult for starting things, but because James Charles also has the matching gate, the gate 53, he can start projects as well as finish them. The one issue that anybody who carries this channel can have is that this is a cyclical energy or cyclical channel. And what that means is that when you carry this energy, when you start something, you need to ride it through until the end, even if you're not really into it after you've decided that you're going to do it. So for this reason, there's a need for people who carry this energy to really pick and choose the projects in their lives or the things that they sign up for. Otherwise, they can be wasting time and energy doing something that they never really cared about in the first place. And this makes me wonder about the agreement that he made with the Sugar Bear people. Was it jumping on board something that he later regretted, but he was roped into it and holding as part of the bargain because it's a cyclical energy? And if you look at it, he initiated it and then closed a deal, and then he was sort of bound by the deal to follow through with it. And the question of why he actually signed this deal on the spot, as he said he did, well, it makes a lot of sense with somebody with an open identity being completely uncomfortable, and there's that sense of anxiety, and all you want to do is really want to be comfortable in your space. And he really wanted to be in Coachella with his friends, and he took a deal that probably he shouldn't have because it wasn't really in the best interest of him in the long run. And lastly, we have the gate 22, or the energy of grace and charm. Again, this is in an unconscious part of his chart, and it's also in the planet Mercury. So when he carries this gate, he can be considered a Prince Charming and also very creative. This can make a person very self-focused, and it's more about expressing and less about how it's received, especially when it's in an unconscious part of his chart. So given all that we've looked at in his chart, the one thing we could see as potential is this disconnect from his actions and the perception of how people are receiving his actions. So now that we've gone through James Charles's chart and the important parts of it, let's have a quick look at Tati Westbrook's chart and see what it can tell us. I don't have the birth time for Tati, but since her chart doesn't vary too greatly in the 24 hours of her birth, I can still get a fair amount of data from her chart, even without a birth time. The first and most interesting part of her chart that I have to say that makes a lot of sense is that she was born under the right angle cross of Contagion. And just as you would expect, it can be about contagion, or the ideas that you express getting contagious and going, as you would say on YouTube, viral, just like her video about James Charles went soon after it was uploaded. Another thing about Tati is that she's a generator type in human design, and which means she doesn't have a motor to her throat, or in other words, things don't get done as quickly as they do for someone like James Charles because she doesn't have that motor to the throat. Another important part of her chart is that she has a channel 1-8 defined, meaning that her identity center or G center is connected to her throat. When somebody carries this energy or this channel is defined, it means that they speak from their soul or the very core of their being. And because of this, criticism and betrayal is really, really hard for anybody who carries this energy to cope with. Having the gate 38 in her Venus probably makes her more of a fighter, so she actually can come out fighting even if she's been criticized, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to hurt. She also has a gate 44, like I mentioned before, where as well as packaging and making things beautiful, there's an ability to stretch the truth. Or in other words, dress up events so they have a more positive slant. She also has 4 fear gates coming off her spleen. And like James Charles, she has a 32, which means she's also ambitious. And as I said before, it's this whole fear that your ambitions will never be realized. So if you can imagine somebody who's trying to start up a company or trying to make a company work like she is, and somebody who is supposed to be your friend comes out and does a promotion for a rival company, then it probably would hit her really hard and make her really scared for how well she's going to do and if she's going to fail in her ambition. Another important part of the defined gates of her spleen is the gate 50. The gate 50 is all about the fear that you're going to fail the people that you love the most by doing something that would in some way harm them. This can be an enabling energy where you make excuses for people that you love so that they don't get hurt. And so what this says is that making that video that she did was probably very difficult because the relationship that she had with James was somewhat maternal based on how they interacted. So her feelings must have been quite powerful for her to move forward. So if we look in our conscious sun, we can see the gate 30, and the gate 30 is all about intensity and holding on to an idea until it comes to completion. Combined with the gate 41, she has a completed channel, which shows somebody who's a visionary and can see through on a project until its completion. Building on this concept of being committed to something, we have the gate 29, which grounds her. And the gate 29 is all about persevering and staying the course until you get something done, despite whatever headwinds you might hit. And as much as this commitment and perseverance can be for a project or something you want to come into being, it can also be for people. And this means staying in relationships and being dedicated and committed to somebody who you're in a relationship with, whatever kind that is. It doesn't have to be a sexual relationship. It can be any kind of relationship. But this relationship energy goes both ways. So as much as she's invested in a relationship, then the expectation is that somebody is going to reciprocate the investment. So if we look at the perspective of the betrayal she felt that James Charles had done by doing the promotion for the other rival company, we can see that probably seeing him do that would have really shaken her whole reality, and the intensity of the conscious sun and not being able to let go of the idea that she was betrayed might have played a part in her actually making the video and releasing it in a very public manner rather than talking behind closed doors. And I've already talked about the gate 38 and basically the whole concept that you're fighting the good fight. So based on the human design chart, all the events that happened might have been the perfect storm for her to act on the feelings that she may have had for some time, rather than stick with the protective nature of the gate 50 and sweep everything under the carpet. I had originally planned to include Jeffree Star in the presentation, but every time I tried to think about his motivations for getting involved, I came up empty, and it was difficult for me to sort of put anything together. I have done his chart in the past before, and I've looked at it a lot, and I've seen, based on what he's been saying and how he's worked with Shane Dawson, that he's gone through a lot of healing over the past year. And I couldn't really understand, like I said, why he was invested. The only thing I could imagine was that he had fallen back into his old habits, just like absently driving down a highway that you've always driven without realizing until you see where you are and it's not where you want to be. He pretty much said everything that I thought in a recent video that he just made, and it really made a lot of sense to me. From a human design perspective, he's extremely open, and because of this, I'm sure over the years, his energy has been completely affected by those around him, and for lack of a better word, he got swept up in the drama believing that it was his. The only way to combat the openness that we have in our charts, which I believe that he's actually managed to do with his maturity, is to understand what's ours and what's other people's. By getting out of the fray and spending some time alone to figure it out and shake off the surrounding energy, usually there's more clarity of what exactly is happening and how you can get caught up in the drama without even knowing it. And the earlier we know this about ourselves and our charts, the easier it gets to really understand how we operate. And then we can connect and improve the parts of us that don't really represent the real us. And I think that's what Jeffree Star has done over this past year. So that's really all I have to say about him. So that's the end of the analysis, and although there might be some insights into the design of James, Charles, and Tati, the actual truth is between those two, and probably a lot of other people. There, of course, are other players in the drama, and both James and Tati will need to deal with the fallout. Based on James's last video where he detailed his side of the story, he admitted that his ego might have been possibly getting out of control, and that he would need some time to work on himself, and maybe in the end he'll learn about who he is and how he relates to people around him, including the people he's interested in romantically. And when you're as big as he is, I guess it takes a huge hit to get a message across. The universal slap upside the head that says, wake up and be better. Wherever this leads him is anyone's guess, but I'm certain that his career isn't quite over yet. He's definitely had his wings clipped for sure, and how the players will fare out is anyone's guess. But if there's anything that we can learn from all that we've seen and heard, it's that drama always seems really fun to watch, and seeing the demise of celebrities is like sport. But what we forget in this virtual world is that beneath all the glitz and glamour of being a celebrity is a real person with real feelings and insecurities. And absolutely nobody's immune to suffering and pain. And sometimes celebrities create an illusion of happiness that might be the furthest thing from the truth, but in fact, they wish it were the truth. And that said, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And if you're interested in learning more about human design and how it can help you in your life, and even some celebrity charts that I'll talk about as well, please be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can get the latest updates, and I'll see you soon with another video.